Jasmine Morgan froze at the doorway, documents clutched in her trembling hands. The boardroom fell silent. "This contract will bankrupt Atlas Corporation," she announced, her 13-year-old voice echoing against marble walls. 20 powerful men stared in disbelief as the janitor's daughter dismantled their billion-dollar deception in flawless Arabic. Before we dive into this shocking story of courage and deception, where are you watching from today? Take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of story lovers. How would you react if a 13-year-old girl just saved a billion-dollar company from certain destruction? Let's find out how Jasmine became the unexpected hero in this high-stakes corporate battle. Jasmine Morgan was invisible. Not in the supernatural sense, but in the way that 13-year-old black girls from poor neighborhoods often are when they walk through the gleaming halls of corporate America. She moved silently behind her mother Denise as they entered Atlas Corporation's downtown Chicago headquarters at 11:30 each night. Security barely glanced at their badges, having grown accustomed to the presence of the night cleaning crew. The massive skyscraper housed one of America's fastest-growing technology firms with 47 floors of innovation, ambition, and wealth. Yet for Jasmine and her mother, it was simply where Denise earned $12 an hour, scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans. "Stay close and stay quiet," Denise always reminded her daughter as they clocked in. "We can't afford a babysitter, so Mr. Whitfield is doing us a favor letting you come along. Don't make me regret it." Jasmine nodded, clutching her worn backpack filled with schoolbooks and her most prized possession, a second-hand tablet she'd saved 6 months to buy. What her mother didn't know was that Jasmine didn't mind spending nights at Atlas. While her mother worked, the curious teenager explored a world far removed from their cramped one-bedroom apartment in Englewood, where gunshots occasionally served as nighttime lullabies and dreams went to die. Their neighborhood school had metal detectors but no functioning science lab. The textbooks were outdated, the teachers burned out. Despite this, Jasmine maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA, though few teachers seemed to notice or care. Just last week, Mr. Peterson had accused her of cheating on the advanced algebra test because no one from this district scores 98% without help. When she tried to explain her solution methodology, he'd cut her off with a dismissive wave. "I don't need attitude from you, Miss Morgan. Just admit what you did." The memory still burned. At Atlas, Jasmine found escape. While her mother cleaned executive offices, she discovered treasures in their trash bins, discarded language learning software, financial magazines, and once an entire online course on international business downloaded onto a flash drive. The executives saw Denise as part of the building's infrastructure, necessary but beneath notice. They'd continue sensitive conversations as if she weren't 3 feet away emptying their wastebaskets. "They don't see us," Denise explained one night after an executive had discussed salary details over speakerphone while she mopped his floor. "We're like furniture to them." But Jasmine saw this invisibility as a superpower. She absorbed everything: conversations about market strategy, international negotiations, corporate law. Atlas's CEO, Richard Whitfield, was particularly fascinating to observe. A self-made billionaire with silver hair and a perpetual tan, he dominated every room with his 6'3" frame and booming voice. Whitfield prided himself on being colorblind in his hiring practices while maintaining a leadership team that was overwhelmingly white and male. "I don't see color, I see talent," he'd proclaimed in a company-wide email after diversity concerns were raised. Yet Jasmine noticed how differently he spoke to the few black executives compared to their white counterparts, his tone subtly more measured, as if speaking to foreign visitors. Denise had worked at Atlas for nearly 4 years, yet still earned less than the newer white janitors. She'd been passed over for lead positions 3 times, despite perfect attendance and glowing performance reviews. "That's just how it is," she'd tell Jasmine when receiving another rejection. "We work twice as hard for half as much. Been that way since my grandmother's time." Jasmine watched her mother's hands grow more, calloused, her chronic back pain worsened from years of bending and lifting. The company health insurance barely covered basic medications, leaving Denise to ration her pain pills month to month. They couldn't afford the specialists who might actually help her condition. Most nights, Jasmine would find a quiet corner in some conference room to do homework while her mother cleaned. One night, exploring an executive floor under renovation, she discovered an unused storage room that would become her secret sanctuary. Small and windowless, it had been overlooked during office reassignments. Jasmine transformed it with a discarded desk lamp and chair, creating a private study where she could read and learn undisturbed. It was here that Jasmine discovered her gift for languages. Using discarded language software and free online resources, she taught herself Spanish in 6 months, then French. But it was Arabic that truly captured her imagination after she found a complete Arabic language course in the recycling bin, apparently purchased by an executive preparing for Middle Eastern business travel and abandoned after the trip was canceled. The complex script and rich sounds fascinated her. Night after night, while her mother worked, Jasmine immersed herself in its study, progressing from basic greetings to complex grammatical structures with remarkable speed. By her 13th birthday, she could read Arabic news sites and understand business conversations. She kept her linguistic talents secret not just from her teachers, who might again accuse her of cheating, but even from her mother, who worried constantly about Jasmine putting on airs or getting above herself. People don't like smart black girls. Denise had warned after Jasmine was bullied for answering too many questions in class. Keep your head down and get through school. But Jasmine couldn't dim her curiosity or ambition. She dreamed of using her languages to become a diplomat or international businesswoman to earn enough money to move her mother to a safe neighborhood and pay for treatments that would ease her pain. Those dreams seemed impossibly distant as Jasmine watched her mother wince while bending to clean under desks, her back spasming from the constant strain. At night, Jasmine would massage her mother's shoulders as Denise swallowed half a pain pill with tap water, making her prescription last twice as long. "We'll be okay," Denise would assure her, though the stack of medical bills on their kitchen table told a different story. Jasmine knew their situation was precarious. One missed paycheck could mean eviction. One serious medical emergency could leave them homeless. She felt the weight of this reality pressing down, making her simultaneously older than her years and painfully aware of her powerlessness as a child. This was the backdrop against which Jasmine Morgan's extraordinary journey would unfold, a journey that would transform her from an invisible girl into someone impossible to ignore. The atmosphere at Atlas Corporation changed drastically in early February. Jasmine sensed it immediately: hushed conversations behind closed doors, increased security executives working later than usual. Her mother reported rumors of financial trouble. "Something big is happening," Denise whispered as they arrived for their night shift. Cleaning supervisor said half the maintenance staff might be cut next month. Jasmine felt her stomach tighten. They couldn't afford for her mother to lose hours, let alone her job. That night, as Jasmine sat in her secret room studying Arabic conjugations, the door to the adjacent conference room swung open. She froze, heart racing, but reminded herself that she was effectively invisible to the executives. Richard Whitfield stormed in, followed by his executive team. "3/4 of decreasing revenue is unacceptable," he boomed, slamming a folder onto the polished table. "Microsoft is eating our lunch in enterprise solutions, and Google just poached our best AI researchers. We need that capital infusion or we're finished." The CFO, a thin man with perpetually worried eyes, cleared his throat. "The domestic investment firms are all passing, sir. They say our valuation is inflated given current market conditions." Whitfield paced the length of the table. "Then we look internationally. I've been cultivating contacts in the UAE. They're cash-rich and looking for American tech investments." The meeting continued for an hour, with Jasmine hardly daring to breathe in her hiding place. Atlas was in serious trouble, bleeding money and talent. The executives discussed layoffs, starting with support staff, including cleaning crews. Later that week, the changes began. Denise's hours were cut, and her supervisor implemented stricter cleaning protocols with threats of termination for those who couldn't keep up. "They're looking for reasons to fire us before severance kicks in." Denise confided, her voice tight with worry. The following Tuesday, Jasmine accompanied her mother as usual, but noticed increased security everywhere. The night guard scrutinized their badges more carefully and followed them with his eyes as they walked to the service elevator. Stay extra quiet tonight, Denise warned. They're looking for any excuse. While her mother began her cleaning routine, Jasmine headed toward her secret room. Passing the executive bathroom, she heard laughter. A group of teenage boys emerged, one she recognized immediately as Carter Whitfield, the CEO's 16-year-old son. Tall and athletic with his father's confident swagger, Carter occasionally visited the office with friends. They stopped short when they saw Jasmine. "Well, look who's here," Carter drawled, nudging his friends. "The helps kid." Jasmine lowered her eyes and tried to pass, but he stepped into her path. "My dad says your mom does a terrible job cleaning my bathroom at home. Says she leaves streaks everywhere." His friends snickered. Jasmine knew he was lying. Her mother had never cleaned the Whitfield home. "Excuse me," she said, quietly trying to move past. Carter affected an exaggerated accent. "Oh no, sir. I's just cleaning here, don't mind little ol' me." His friends erupted in laughter as he mimicked what he imagined was Denise's speech, though her mother spoke with perfect grammar and a slight Midwestern accent. Something snapped inside Jasmine. "My mother doesn't talk like that," she said, her voice stronger than intended. "And she's worked here 4 years without a complaint." Carter's face darkened. "Who do you think you're talking to? My father owns this building and everyone in it, including your mother." He stepped closer. "Maybe I should tell him about the attitude problem his janitor's daughter has. See how fast your mom gets fired." Before Jasmine could respond, a security guard turned the corner. Seeing the confrontation, he immediately approached, not Carter but Jasmine. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Whitfield?" he asked, his hand moving to his belt. "This girl bothering you," Carter smirked. "Just caught her wandering around the executive floor, probably looking for stuff to steal." The guard grabbed Jasmine's arm roughly. "Let's go, kid. You know you're not supposed to be up here." "My mother works here," Jasmine protested, trying to pull away. "She's cleaning the West Wing." The guard tightened his grip. "Sure she is. Let's go find out." He marched her through the corridors, past staring executives working late, her cheeks burning with humiliation. They found Denise cleaning a conference room, her face falling when she saw them. "Mrs. Morgan, you know visitors aren't allowed in secure areas," the guard said sternly. "Your daughter was harassing Mr. Whitfield's son." Denise's eyes widened with fear. "I'm so sorry, sir. It won't happen again." She grabbed Jasmine's arm, her fingers digging in painfully. "What were you thinking?" she hissed. The guard crossed his arms. "One more incident, and I'll have to report this to management." "Understand." After he left, Denise collapsed into a chair, her hand trembling as she pressed it against her forehead. "Do you want us to end up homeless? Is that what you want?" she demanded, her voice cracking. "I need this job, Jasmine. We can't afford for you to have pride right now." The next day, Richard Whitfield himself approached Denise as she was starting her shift. Jasmine, standing slightly behind her, mother felt a wave of dread. "Mrs. Morgan," he said, his voice falsely jovial. "I understand there was a misunderstanding between your daughter and my son yesterday." Denise stiffened. "I apologize for any trouble, Mr. Whitfield. It won't happen again." He waved dismissively. "Boys will be boys. I'm sure it was nothing serious." His eyes finally acknowledged Jasmine's presence. "Young lady, you must understand that Carter is under tremendous pressure as my successor. Perhaps he wasn't as courteous as he could have been." "It wasn't an apology," Jasmine noted. "Not even close." However, Whitfield continued, "We do have strict policies about non-employees in certain areas. For security reasons, you should remain in the break room while your mother works." Denise nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Of course." After Whitfield left, Denise turned to Jasmine, her expression desperate. "Promise me you'll keep your head down. Promise me you won't make trouble." Jasmine promised, but inwardly rebelled. The break room was a tiny windowless space where the cleaning staff stored supplies. Sitting there for 8 hours would be torture. Instead, she became even more careful about staying hidden, using service corridors and timing her movements to avoid security. She couldn't access her secret room anymore. Security had increased on the executive floors, but found new hiding places throughout the building. 2 weeks later, a company-wide email announced an exciting development. Atlas was in final negotiations with Al Farsi Investments, a prestigious UAE-based firm interested in a major stake in the company. The potential $500 million deal would save Atlas from its financial troubles and fund its expansion into new markets. The entire company buzzed with the news. Layoffs were temporarily halted, as everyone focused on impressing the potential investors. Janitorial staff were ordered to work overtime, ensuring the building was immaculate, though Denise noted bitterly that no overtime pay was offered. "Just be grateful you still have a job," her supervisor reminded her when she dared ask. The night before the Al-Farsi delegation was due to arrive, Jasmine overheard executives discussing the visitors. "Remember, these guys represent old money," one vice president advised another. "Very traditional values. Keep the female executives in the background during negotiations." Another added, "And for God's sake, make sure all the diversity hires stay out of sight. The Arabs are even more racist than Whitfield." They laughed, not noticing Jasmine frozen in the shadows of the hallway, their words burning into her memory. The collision of these different worlds, corporate America, Middle Eastern wealth, and the invisible service workers who kept everything running, was about to create a perfect storm. And 13-year-old Jasmine Morgan, a girl everyone underestimated, would find herself at its center. What happens when invisible people witness the machinations of the powerful? What forces converge when those without voice suddenly hold the key to a kingdom's fall? The Al-Farsi delegation arrived at Atlas Corporation on a Wednesday morning in March, bringing with them an air of exotic power and old-world wealth. Jasmine watched from the lobby's mezzanine as 5 impeccably dressed Arab businessmen strode through the revolving doors, flanked by security personnel with earpieces and stern expressions. At their center walked Khalid Al-Farsi himself, the billionaire investor whose family controlled one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East. Tall and commanding in a perfectly tailored Western suit, he moved with the confidence of a man accustomed to parting crowds with his mere presence. Richard Whitfield greeted them in the lobby, bowing slightly lower than necessary, his usually booming voice modulated to a respectful tenor. "Mr. Al-Farsi, welcome to Atlas. We're honored by your presence." The executives surrounding Whitfield smiled with identical expressions of deference. Khalid nodded regally, his handshake brief. "The honor is mine, Mr. Whitfield. Your reputation precedes you." His English was perfect, with only the slightest accent. Beside him stood a shorter, thinner man with calculating eyes and a leather portfolio clutched to his chest. "My legal counsel and chief negotiator, Samir Nazari Khalid," introduced. Whitfield shook the man's hand with equal deference. "We've prepared the executive conference room for our discussions. Shall we?" As the procession moved toward the elevators, Jasmine noticed how the Atlas employees practically tripped over themselves to appear useful. Women executives who normally commanded meetings had been relegated to administrative roles, taking coats and offering refreshments. The company's few people of color were conspicuously absent from the welcoming committee. For the next 3 days, the Al-Farsi delegation and Atlas executives engaged in intensive negotiations. The building hummed with anticipation. Cleaning staff worked double shifts to ensure spotless surroundings, with Denise returning home each morning exhausted and tight-lipped. "They're making us clean the same conference room 3 times a day," she confided to Jasmine one evening as she soaked her swollen feet. "Mr. Nazari complained about a speck of dust on the window ledge, and they made Maria cry when they fired her on the spot." Jasmine felt anger bubbling up. "That's not fair. She has 3 kids." Denise gave her a warning look. "Life isn't fair, especially not for people like us. Remember that." On the 4th night of negotiations, Jasmine accompanied her mother to work as usual. The building was quieter than it had been, most of the executives having gone home after a long day of meetings. Denise was assigned to clean the main conference room where the negotiations had taken place, with strict instructions not to disturb any documents. "Don't even look at the papers," her supervisor warned. "They've got security cameras everywhere now." While her mother cleaned meticulously around stacks of contracts and financial projections, Jasmine sat quietly in a corner chair, pretending to read a book while actually observing everything. The conference room door opened suddenly, and Denise jumped nervously. Khalid Al-Farsi entered, followed closely by Samir Nazari. Both men stopped short upon seeing the cleaning staff. "Oh," Khalid said, seemingly surprised. "We didn't realize anyone would be here." Denise immediately lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, sir. I can come back later." No, Khalid waved dismissively. "Please continue. We just need to retrieve some documents." He spoke to Denise as if addressing furniture, his eyes never quite focusing on her face. As Denise resumed cleaning, the two men moved to the far side of the room and began speaking in rapid Arabic, clearly assuming no one present would understand. Jasmine kept her eyes on her book, her heart racing as she realized she could comprehend their conversation. "The Americans are more desperate than we anticipated," Samir said in Arabic, shuffling through some papers. "Whitfield practically begged for better terms today." Khalid laughed softly. "Did you see how quickly he dismissed his own legal team's concerns? The man is drowning and knows it. The modified terms are in the Arabic addendum," Samir continued, tapping a thick document. Their lawyers barely glanced at it, assuming it was just a translation of the English version. And their Arabic translator, Khalid, asked. Samir smirked. "A junior associate who studied conversational Arabic for 2 years. He can't distinguish between standard commercial terms and our specialized legal language." Jasmine felt her blood run cold as she continued to listen, pretending to be absorbed in her book. "So the effective control threshold is hidden in the Arabic version," Khalid confirmed. "Yes," Samir replied. "While the English contract specifies we're purchasing 20% equity, the Arabic addendum contains contingency clauses that trigger when their quarterly earnings drop below projections, which they will based on our blanks analysis. And that gives us 51% control for the same purchase price plus first rights to their patent portfolio." Samir finished, his voice smug. "They'll never see it coming until the first earnings report after closing. By then it will be too late to contest." "Perfect," Khalid replied. "The board back home will be pleased. 500 million for a company worth 3 times that once we strip it for parts." They switched back to English as a security guard walked past the conference room, nodding politely at the executives before moving on. Jasmine's mind raced. The Al-Farsi Group was planning to take over Atlas through hidden contract terms that the company's lawyers couldn't properly read. It was a brilliant trap exploiting the language barrier and Whitfield's desperation. After the men left with their documents, Denise exhaled heavily. "Those men make me nervous," she admitted. "Did you see how they looked through me like I wasn't even human?" Jasmine nodded, debating whether to share what she'd overheard. But her mother had enough worries. Besides, who would believe a 13-year-old janitor's daughter claiming to understand complex legal Arabic? The next day, Jasmine pretended to be sick, convincing her mother to leave her at home. As soon as Denise left for her afternoon shift, Jasmine took the bus to Atlas, using her mother's spare access card to enter through the service entrance. She had to see those contract documents for herself to confirm what she'd overheard. Navigating through service corridors and using her knowledge of security patrol patterns, she made her way to the conference room where the contracts were being kept. The room was empty, but locked. Through the glass walls, she could see stacks of documents spread across the table. A custodial closet across the hall provided the perfect hiding spot to wait for an opportunity. After 30 minutes, a secretary entered the room to retrieve something, leaving the door ajar when she left. Jasmine seized her chance, slipping inside, and quickly locating the Arabic addendum Samir had mentioned. Her hands trembled as she used her phone to photograph several key pages, her eyes confirming the deceptive language Samir had described. The control triggers were cleverly disguised within standard legal terminology, using archaic Arabic forms that even a decent Arabic speaker might misinterpret. She had just finished when she heard voices approaching. Panicking, she ducked beneath the conference table, pulling a chair in to conceal herself. 2 security guards entered, doing a sweep of the room. "Whitfield is paranoid about these documents," one complained. "Third check today. Can you blame him?" 500 million on the line, the other replied, running a hand along the table edge directly above Jasmine's head. "My cousin works at Meditech. Says they were in talks with Al-Farsi last year. Deal fell apart suddenly. Company tanked 2 months later. Sounds sketchy. Rich people games, man." We're just the pawns." After completing their check, the guards left. Jasmine waited 3 agonizing minutes before crawling out and making her escape, the photographed contract pages burning a hole in her pocket. Do you think Jasmine should tell someone what she discovered or keep quiet to protect her mother's job? Comment number 1, if you believe she should speak up regardless of consequences, or number 2, if you think self-preservation should come first. And have you ever discovered information you weren't supposed to know? Hit that like button if you've ever been in a situation where you had to decide between doing what's right and doing what's safe. Now, with evidence of the fraud in hand, what could one 13-year-old girl possibly do against powerful billionaires? Let's see how Jasmine navigates these dangerous waters. Jasmine sat cross-legged on her bed that night, surrounded by printouts of the contract photos she'd taken. Her small desk lamp cast long shadows across the pages as she painstakingly translated the Arabic text, checking and rechecking her work against online legal dictionaries. The deception was even more elaborate than she'd initially realized. The Arabic addendum contained not just control triggers based on performance metrics, but clauses that would transfer Atlas's most valuable intellectual property to Al-Farsi subsidiaries for safekeeping during any transitional period. It was essentially corporate theft, hidden in plain sight behind a language barrier. Jasmine's hands trembled as she finished her translation notes. The contract was scheduled to be signed in just 4 days. Atlas Corporation would be gutted, hundreds would lose their jobs, including her mother, and Whitfield would be blindsided by his own arrogance and cultural ignorance. She had to do something. But who would listen to her? She was 13, black female, and the daughter of a janitor, invisible in every way that mattered in the corporate world. The following morning, after her mother left for her daytime cleaning job at a local doctor's office, Jasmine began researching Al-Farsi investments online. What she discovered confirmed her suspicions. The investment firm had a pattern of predatory acquisitions throughout Europe and North America, specifically targeting companies in temporary financial distress. They would swoop in with seemingly generous offers, gain controlling interest, then strip the companies of their valuable assets and intellectual property before abandoning the hollowed-out husks. 3 companies had gone bankrupt within a year of Al-Farsi partnerships. Hundreds of jobs lost, lives ruined. The evidence was there for anyone who cared to look, but desperate executives like Whitfield saw only the promise of immediate capital. Jasmine created a secure email account and composed a careful message to Richard Whitfield, explaining what she'd discovered without revealing her identity. She attached her translation notes with specific page references. After hesitating for a full hour, her cursor hovering over the send button, she finally submitted the email. Nothing happened. The next day she checked Whitfield's public email repeatedly. No response, no acknowledgement. She later overheard a conversation between executives that revealed why Whitfield's assistant had a strict policy of filtering all unsolicited emails, especially those with attachments directly to trash. Her warning had never even reached him. That night, Atlas Corporation announced an upcoming round of layoffs as part of organizational restructuring ahead of the strategic investment. The cleaning staff would be reduced by 40%, with the remaining workers required to cover additional areas without increased compensation. Denise came home looking defeated. "My supervisor says I'm on the cut list," she told Jasmine, sinking into their worn couch. Effective after the contract signing on Friday, Jasmine felt panic rising. "But why, you've been there 4 years?" Denise laughed bitterly. "Seniority means higher pay. They're keeping the newer hires who make less." She pressed her palms against her eyes. "I don't know how we'll make rent next month. The waitlisting for Section 8 housing is 3 years long." Jasmine watched her mother swallow another half-pain pill with tap water, wincing as she stretched her back. The medical bills on their kitchen table had multiplied, with several stamped "final notice" in angry red letters. Their situation was already precarious. Without Atlas, they faced homelessness within weeks. Jasmine felt torn between self-preservation and doing what was right. That night she barely slept, weighing her options. By morning she'd made her decision. She would try once more to alert Atlas about the contract trap, this time approaching a mid-level manager who might be more accessible than Whitfield. During her mother's evening shift, Jasmine approached Marcus Wells, a marketing director who had always treated the cleaning staff with basic courtesy. She caught him alone in the break room, nervously clutching her translation notes. "Excuse me, Mr. Wells, could I speak with you for a minute? It's important." He glanced up from his phone, his expression shifting from surprise to mild annoyance. "Kid, I'm on a break. Whatever it is, it can wait." "It's about the Al-Farsi contract," Jasmine pushed on, her voice stronger than she felt. "There's something wrong with the Arabic sections. They're not what the English version says." Wells raised an eyebrow, finally giving her his full attention. "And you know this," how exactly Jasmine swallowed hard. "I understand Arabic. I've been studying it, and I overheard Mr. Al-Farsi and Mr. Nazari discussing how they've hidden clauses that will give them controlling interest in Atlas." She held out her notes. "I've translated the problematic sections here." Wells stared at her for a long moment, then burst into laughter. "Let me get this straight. You're— What, 12, 13, Jasmine corrected automatically. "Right. You're 13 and you speak Arabic well enough to understand complex legal terminology, and you've uncovered a conspiracy that our entire legal team missed." His tone dripped with condescension. "Kid, I don't know what game you're playing, but I've got actual work to do." He stood brushing past her without taking the papers. "Does your mother know you're bothering executives with this nonsense? Because I could mention it to HR." The threat was clear. Jasmine retreated, humiliation burning her cheeks. She tried 2 more managers that week with similar results. One patted her head and told her she had quite an imagination. Another threatened to report her for accessing confidential documents. No one would listen. No one would even look at her evidence. By Thursday, the day before the scheduled signing, Jasmine was desperate enough to consider something radical approaching Whitfield's son, Carter. Despite their previous hostile encounter, he was the only person who might have direct access to his father without intermediaries. She found him after school at the Atlas gym, a perk for executives and their families. Carter was shooting baskets with friends, showing off with elaborate dunks and trash talk. Jasmine waited until he went for a water break, then approached cautiously. "Carter, can I talk to you for a second?" He turned, recognition dawning. "Well, if it isn't the janitor's kid, come to apologize." His friends snickered nearby. Jasmine gritted her teeth. "It's about your dad's company. The Al-Farsi deal isn't what it seems. They're hiding things in the Arabic sections of the contract." Carter's expression shifted from mockery to curiosity. "What are you talking about?" Briefly, desperately, Jasmine explained what she'd discovered, showing him her translation notes. To her surprise, he actually looked at them, his brow furrowing. "How do you know Arabic?" he asked, suspicion evident. "I taught myself," she replied. "I like languages." Carter studied her for a moment. "So, you're saying these Arab dudes are trying to screw over my dad?" She nodded. "The contract gives them controlling interest if Atlas misses earnings targets, which they will based on current projections." For a moment, Jasmine thought she'd broken through. Carter seemed to be considering her words seriously. Then his friends called from the court. "Yo, Carter, we playing or what?" He glanced at them, then back at Jasmine. "Look, I'll think about it, okay? Maybe mention it to my dad." He handed back her notes. "No promises, though. It wasn't much, but it was something." Jasmine left feeling cautiously optimistic. That optimism was shattered the next morning when she overheard her mother on the phone with her supervisor. "Yes, I understand," Denise was saying, her voice tight. "No, she won't be coming with me anymore. I apologize for the trouble." After hanging up, Denise turned to Jasmine, her expression a mixture of fear and anger. "What did you do, Carter Whitfield? Showed your crazy accusations to his father. They think we're trying to sabotage the Al-Farsi deal." Jasmine felt the blood drain from her face. "Mom, I can explain. Do you know what Richard Whitfield said?" Denise continued, her voice rising. "He said, if I can't control my delusional daughter, I shouldn't bring you to work." She paced their small kitchen. "I'm already losing my job after today's signing. Now they're watching me like I'm some kind of corporate spy. Jasmine tried to make her mother understand, explaining everything she'd discovered, but Denise wouldn't listen. Arabic. You don't speak Arabic. Where do you get these ideas? She demanded. This is what I've been afraid of. You getting notions above your station. We can't afford your pride, Jasmine. We can't afford for you to play detective. Her mother's words stung, but Jasmine understood the fear behind them. For generations, Black Americans like her mother had been trained to keep their heads down, to not make waves, because the consequences of challenging power fell disproportionately on their shoulders. Denise had grown up watching her own parents struggle against systemic barriers, only to be crushed when they dared to protest unfair treatment. She'd learned survival meant invisibility. That night, Denise left for her final shift at Atlas without Jasmine. The contract signing was scheduled for 10 o'clock the following morning, with a celebratory reception to follow. After her mother left, Jasmine sat in their dark apartment, facing the hardest decision of her young life. She could remain silent, preserving what little dignity her mother had left in her final hours at Atlas, or she could act on what she knew to be true, likely humiliating herself and her mother in the process. Outside their window, sirens wailed in the distance, a familiar sound in their neighborhood. Jasmine thought about all the other families in their building, the Washingtons, whose son needed expensive asthma medications, the elderly Johnsons, who relied on their daughter's job at Atlas to supplement their inadequate social dollars. Security, the Garcia family, whose father had been laid off last month and was still searching for work, all of them invisible to men like Whitfield and Al-Farsi. All of them collateral damage in games played by the powerful. Morning came, and with it, Jasmine's decision. The Atlas Corporation headquarters gleamed in the morning sunlight, its glass facade reflecting the clear blue April sky as Jasmine approached the main entrance. She'd never used this door before, always entering through the service entrance with her mother. The security guard at the front desk looked up with immediate suspicion as she approached. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone suggesting the opposite. Jasmine straightened her shoulders, wearing her best outfit, a slightly too small navy dress her mother had found at a church donation drive. "I need to see Mr. Whitfield. It's urgent." The guard didn't even try to hide his amusement. "I bet it is. And you are Jasmine Morgan. My mother works here. It's about the Al-Farsi contract signing." Recognition flashed in his eyes, followed by hardening suspicion. "You're the janitor's kid, the one with the stories about the contract." News traveled fast. "It's not a story," Jasmine insisted. "Please, the signing is in less than 2 hours. Mr. Whitfield needs to know what's in that Arabic addendum." The guard picked up his phone, speaking quietly while maintaining eye contact with Jasmine. 2 minutes later, a stern-faced woman from Human Resources appeared, flanked by another security officer. "Miss Morgan," the woman said crisply, "I'm Karen Daniels from HR. You need to leave the premises immediately." Jasmine stood her ground. "Please, I just need 5 minutes with Mr. Whitfield. It's about the contract. Mr. Whitfield is preparing for an important meeting and cannot be disturbed." Daniels cut her off. "Especially not by a child spreading disruptive rumors. They're not rumors." Jasmine's voice rose despite her efforts to remain calm. "Al-Farsi is hiding clauses in the Arabic sections that will give them control of the company." Several people in the lobby turned to stare. Daniel's face tightened with anger as she signaled the security guards. "Remove her from the building. She is not authorized to be here." The guards moved forward, each taking one of Jasmine's arms. She didn't resist physically. That would only confirm their perception of her as a troublemaker. But she didn't stop talking either. "Please just check the contract. Have an independent translator look at Section 4.7 of the Arabic Addendum. It contains trigger clauses based on quarterly earnings." Her words echoed in the marble lobby as they escorted her outside, depositing her on the sidewalk with a warning not to return. Jasmine stood there watching executives and support staff stream into the building, none sparing her a glance. She was invisible again, but this time her invisibility felt like a prison rather than a superpower. She circled the block, considering her options. The service entrance would be watched now. The loading dock had too many workers present. Then she remembered the fire escape on the east side of the building, connected to a rarely used side entrance. During fire drills, she'd noticed the door was often propped open for ventilation. It was worth a try. 20 minutes later, Jasmine slipped inside Atlas Corporation through the side entrance, narrowly avoiding a maintenance worker on break. She took the service stairs, carefully timing her movements between security patrols. The executive floor would be impossible to access now, but perhaps she could find someone else with influence, someone who might listen. As she emerged on the 14th floor, she nearly collided with Richard Whitfield himself, surrounded by his executive team as they moved between conference rooms. It was now or never, Mr. Tace. Whitfield, she called out, stepping directly into his path. Startled, the CEO stopped short. His eyes narrowed with recognition. "You're the Morgan girl, the one spreading lies about our investors." Jasmine took a deep breath. "Sir, they're not lies. The Arabic sections of the contract contain hidden clauses that trigger when quarterly earnings drop below projections. They'll gain controlling interest while only paying for 20%. Around them, executives murmured with embarrassment and annoyance. Whitfield's face reddened. "Young lady, we have the top legal minds in corporate law reviewing this contract. Are you suggesting they missed something that a 13-year-old girl caught?" His tone was scathing. "I speak Arabic," Jasmine persisted. "Your lawyers are relying on translations provided by Al-Farsi's team. They're deliberately misleading you." Whitfield studied her with cold eyes. "And why would a janitor's daughter speak Arabic?" The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. "I taught myself," she replied simply. Several executives chuckled. "Of course you did," Whitfield said dismissively. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but this is business, adult business. I suggest you focus on school and leave corporate matters to professionals." He gestured to a nearby security guard. "Please escort Miss Morgan out of the building, and make sure she doesn't get back in." As the guard approached, Jasmine made a final desperate attempt. "Just have an independent translator. Check it. What's the harm in being certain?" But Whitfield had already turned away his attention back on his team as they discussed the imminent signing ceremony. The guard gripped Jasmine's arm firmly but not roughly. "Come on, kid. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." As they walked toward the elevator, Jasmine spotted Carter Whitfield stepping out, looking surprised to see her. "You again," he said, eyebrows raised. "I thought Dad told you to back off." The guard paused, respectful of the CEO's son. Jasmine seized the opportunity. "Carter, please. Did you tell your father what I showed you?" Carter glanced around, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I mentioned it, but come on. This is a huge deal for the company." "Dad says you're just causing trouble. I'm trying to prevent a disaster," Jasmine insisted. "Why would I make this up? What would I gain?" Something in her desperate sincerity seemed to reach him. Carter hesitated, then sighed. "Fine. Show me your proof again. The actual contract pages this time, not just your notes." The security guard looked uncertain. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm supposed to remove her from the building." "It's fine," Carter waved him off. "I'll take responsibility. Give us 5 minutes in the small conference room there." Once alone with Carter, Jasmine quickly pulled up the photos of the contract on her phone. "Look, here's section 4.7. It says in Arabic that if quarterly earnings fall below 70% of projections for 2 consecutive quarters, control automatically transfers to the majority stakeholder, which becomes Al-Farsi through this related clause. Here." Carter squinted at the screen. "I don't read Arabic. This could say anything." Jasmine switched to her translation notes. "Here's the English translation. Compare it to what the official English version says about performance metrics." Carter skimmed her notes, his expression gradually shifting from skepticism to concern. "This is pretty serious if true." He looked up at her. "But why should I believe you can translate legal Arabic? You're a kid." "Test me," Jasmine challenged. "Find something in Arabic online and I'll translate it right now." Carter pulled out his own phone, quickly finding an Arabic news article about business. He showed it to Jasmine, who translated several paragraphs without hesitation. His eyebrows rose. "Okay, that's impressive. But still our lawyers." "Your lawyers don't read Arabic," Jasmine interrupted. "They're relying on Al-Farsi's translators who work for them, not Atlas." She leaned forward earnestly. "Carter, I know you don't like me, and I understand why you wouldn't trust me. But what if I'm right? What happens to your father's company then?" Carter was silent for a long moment, weighing her words. Finally he stood. "I'll talk to Dad again. That's all I can promise." He left without another word, leaving Jasmine alone in the conference room. Minutes later, the security guard returned. "Time to go, Miss Morgan." This time, Jasmine didn't resist. She'd done everything possible to warn them. As the guard escorted her through the lobby, she caught sight of Khalid Al-Farsi and his entourage entering the building their arrival, creating a stir among the staff. Samir Nazari walked slightly behind his boss, the contract portfolio clutched to his chest, a small, satisfied smile playing at his lips. Outside, Jasmine sat on a bench across from Atlas, watching the building and wondering what was happening inside. Had Carter spoken to his father again, would anyone verify the Arabic sections before it was too late? An hour passed. Then her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Where are you? Heard security removed you from building twice. Coming home now." Jasmine's heart sank. Not only had she failed to stop the fraudulent deal, but she'd also further embarrassed her mother on her final day of work. She was about to head for the bus stop when a sleek black car pulled up in front of the building. Carter Whitfield emerged, looking around urgently before spotting her on the bench. He jogged across the street. "Hey, Jasmine." She looked up in surprise as he approached. "I showed Dad your notes," he said, slightly out of breath. "He didn't believe me either. Said you probably found some conspiracy theory online." Jasmine's shoulders slumped. "So that's it then. They're signing the contract." Carter hesitated. "Not exactly. I might have shown your evidence to some of my friends as a joke yesterday. Posted it on social media." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "One of their dads works at Goldman Sachs in their Middle East division. He saw it and called my dad this morning asking some uncomfortable questions about the deal." Jasmine straightened. "So they're checking the contract." Carter shook his head. "Dad's too proud to admit he might have missed something. He dismissed it as competitors trying to sabotage the deal." He lowered his voice. "But I heard him on the phone with our lawyers insisting everything was fine. The signing ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Jasmine felt a surge of frustration. "So what now?" Carter looked conflicted. "I don't know. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe it's fine." But his expression suggested he didn't believe that anymore. "Look, I should get back. The family's supposed to be there for photos with the Al-Farsi group." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about before. The stuff I said about your mom. It was racist," Jasmine supplied. Carter winced but nodded. "Yeah, it was." He jogged back to his car, leaving Jasmine alone again with her knowledge and her powerlessness. She checked the time, 9:45. The contract would be signed at 10. She had 15 minutes to prevent a disaster that no one believed was coming. 15 minutes to be heard in a world determined not to see her. 15 minutes to decide how far she was willing to go. What would you do if you had 15 minutes to stop a catastrophe that no one believed was coming? What risks would you take when those in power refused to listen? With the Al-Farsi contract signing just minutes away, Jasmine made her peopling decision. She couldn't give up now, not when she was the only person who understood the true danger Atlas Corporation faced. Using the commotion of press arrivals as cover, she slipped back into the building through a delivery entrance, narrowly avoiding detection by ducking behind a cart of catering supplies. The main elevator bank was heavily guarded now, with security checking badges for access to the upper floors where the signing ceremony would take place. Jasmine needed another route. Remembering the service elevators from her nights with her mother, she navigated through back corridors until she reached the utility area. A maintenance worker was just stepping out of the service elevator, leaving it momentarily unattended. Jasmine slid inside before the doors closed, her heart pounding as she pressed the button for the 40th floor. Executive territory. The elevator moved agonizingly slowly, stopping several times for cleaning staff. Each time, Jasmine pressed herself into the corner, trying to appear as if she belonged. One older janitor recognized her. "Denise's girl. What are you doing here?" he whispered, concern evident in his voice. "Your mama's already gone home." Emergency Jasmine whispered back, "Please don't tell anyone you saw me." He studied her face, then nodded once. "Be careful, child. They fired your mama this morning." Made a big scene about it too, right in front of those Arab fellows. Jasmine felt her stomach drop. What? The layoffs weren't supposed to happen until after the signing. The janitor shook his head sadly. That Nazari man complained about dust in his water glass. Your mama stood up for herself, said she'd cleaned it proper. Next thing, security's escorting her out, Whitfield apologizing like she'd committed some crime. The elevator stopped at the 40th floor, and Jasmine stepped out, her resolve hardened by this new information. Her mother had been humiliated and fired early, likely at Al-Farsi's instigation. They must have realized Denise was her mother and wanted her removed from the building before the signing. The executive floor was buzzing with activity. Staff hurried about with last-minute preparations, while caterers set up a champagne toast for after the signing. Security guards stood at key points, but they were focused on the main approaches to the boardroom, not the service areas. Jasmine moved carefully through the peripheral corridors using potted plants and furniture as cover. As she neared the main boardroom where the signing would take place, she heard Khalid Al-Farsi's distinctive voice. "A shame about the cleaning woman this morning. Some people simply don't understand their proper place." Whitfield's laugh followed, uncomfortable but accommodating. "Yes, well, these things happen." "Shall we review the final points before the ceremony?" Jasmine needed to get closer, but the hallway leading to the boardroom was exposed with nowhere to hide. She retreated, looking for another approach. Time was running dangerously short. The wall clock read 9:52, 8 minutes until signing. A service door caught her attention. It led to the small kitchen area adjacent to the boardroom, used for preparing executive refreshments. Slipping inside, she found 2 catering staff arranging pastries on silver trays. "Excuse me," one said sharply. "Staff only in here." Thinking quickly, Jasmine pointed to the boardroom door. "Mr. Whitfield sent me to check if the special coffee is ready for Mr. Al-Farsi. He's very particular about his Turkish coffee." The caterers exchanged glances. "We weren't told about special coffee," one said uncertainly. It was a last-minute request, Jasmine improvised. "Something about a traditional signing custom. I don't know the details." The senior caterer sighed. "Fine, check if you need to, then get out. We're behind schedule as it is." Jasmine moved to the connecting door, pressing her ear against it to listen to the conversation in the boardroom. Samir Nazari was speaking, his voice smooth and practiced. "As you can see, Mr. Whitfield, we've incorporated all the agreed-upon terms. The English version for your records and the Arabic version for ours. Both legally identical, of course." "Of course," Whitfield replied confidently. "Our legal team has thoroughly reviewed everything." Jasmine nearly laughed aloud at the irony. She needed to see what was happening to know exactly how much time remained. Carefully cracking the door, she peered into the boardroom. The long mahogany table was surrounded by executives and lawyers from both companies. At its head sat Whitfield with Khalid Al-Farsi at his right hand. Samir was distributing the final contracts, thick documents in leather portfolios. Whitfield picked up an ornate pen, likely a ceremonial gift from Al-Farsi. "Well, gentlemen, I believe we're ready to proceed. The press is waiting in the adjacent room for the announcement and photos." 9:57. 3 minutes remaining. Jasmine needed evidence, irrefutable proof that would force them to listen. Her eyes landed on Samir's briefcase, left open on a side table while he distributed the contracts. Inside was his tablet, likely containing all his notes and possibly the original contract drafts. If she could access it, she might find the evidence she needed. But how to create a distraction? The catering staff provided an unwitting answer. As they prepared to bring refreshments into the boardroom, one balanced a tray of delicate champagne flutes. Jasmine moved, suddenly bumping into him with a gasped apology. The tray tilted, sending crystal glasses crashing to the floor in a spectacular shower of glass. "What the hell?" the caterer exclaimed, as everyone whirled toward the noise. In the momentary chaos, Jasmine darted into the boardroom, snatched Samir's tablet, and retreated to a corner, partially hidden by a large potted palm. Security rushed to investigate the disturbance in the kitchen, leaving the boardroom briefly unattended. Jasmine's fingers flew across the tablet screen, desperately seeking a way past the lock. To her shock, it wasn't password protected. Samir had apparently left it unlocked while working. She quickly navigated to his email, finding a folder labeled Atlas Acquisition. Inside was a goldmine messages between Samir and Al-Farsi's legal team explicitly discussing the hidden clauses and how to disguise them from Atlas's lawyers. One email contained the smoking gun, side-by-side comparisons of the legitimate English translation versus what the contract actually said in Arabic. Even more damning, there was a message from Samir to Khalid from that very morning: Morgan problem eliminated. Mother fired and removed from premises. They had specifically targeted her mother after realizing Jasmine was raising concerns about the contract. The tablet suddenly emitted a loud ping, an incoming message. In the boardroom, heads turned toward the sound. Samir's eyes widened as he noticed his tablet in Jasmine's hands. "Security!" he shouted, pointing. Thief Jasmine didn't wait for security to reach her. Clutching the tablet, she bolted for the main boardroom doors, bursting through them into the reception area, where journalists and photographers waited for the post-signing press conference. Cameras turned toward her as she ran security in close pursuit. "Stop that girl!" a guard shouted. "She's stolen confidential documents." Jasmine darted through the crowd, making for the elevators, but found her path blocked by more security personnel responding to the alert. She was trapped, the tablet clutched to her chest as guards closed in from all sides. 10 o'clock exactly. The signing should be starting right now. In desperation, Jasmine turned to the assembled journalists. "The Al-Farsi contract is fraudulent," she shouted. "They've hidden control triggers in the Arabic sections. It's all here on this tablet." Security reached her, one guard gripping her arm while another tried to take the tablet. Jasmine resisted, holding tight to her evidence, as a crowd gathered around the commotion. Then, unexpectedly, Carter Whitfield pushed through the onlookers. "Wait," he called to security. "Don't take that tablet. I want to see what she's talking about." The guards hesitated, uncertain about manhandling a child in front of press cameras, especially when the CEO's son was involved. Carter approached Jasmine. "Show me what you found." With trembling hands, Jasmine pulled up the damning emails, turning the screen so Carter could see. His eyes widened as he read. "Holy shit," he muttered, then looked up at the guards. "Get my father out here. Right now." One of the guards spoke into his radio. Moments later, Richard Whitfield emerged from the boardroom, his face flushed with anger. "What is the meaning of this interruption? We were about to sign." Carter thrust the tablet into his father's hands. "Dad, you need to see this. The kid was right all along." Whitfield's expression changed as he scrolled through the emails, color draining from his face. Behind him, Khalid Al-Farsi and Samir Nazari appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with calculating eyes. "Mr. Whitfield," Khalid said smoothly, "whatever this disruption is, surely it can wait until after our signing." Whitfield looked up from the tablet, his expression hardening. "I think not, Mr. Al-Farsi. Perhaps you'd care to explain these emails discussing how to hide control triggers in the Arabic sections of our contract." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Journalists who had been expecting a routine business announcement suddenly found themselves in the middle of breaking news. Cameras flashed as Al-Farsi's composed facade cracked momentarily. "This is absurd," he said dismissively. "The child has clearly fabricated something to cause trouble. The emails are from your server." Jasmine spoke up, her voice stronger than she felt. "And I can translate the contract clauses right here, right now, in front of everyone." She turned to the assembled press. "Does anyone here speak Arabic? Anyone who can verify what I'm saying?" A woman stepped forward from the group of journalists. "I was Al Jazeera's Cairo correspondent for 5 years. I speak legal Arabic." Samir's face contorted with anger as he lunged toward Jasmine. "Give me that tablet, you little thief!" Security intercepted him, holding him back as the situation threatened to spiral out of control. "Do you think Jasmine was right to create such a public scene, potentially embarrassing powerful men like Al-Farsi and Whitfield?" Comment number 1. If you believe that sometimes public exposure is the only way to fight corruption, or number 2, if you think she should have found a more discreet approach. And have you ever had to stand up against someone in power? Hit that like button if you've ever had to speak truth regardless of the consequences. As cameras continued to flash and security struggled to maintain order, what would happen next in this high-stakes confrontation? Let's find out as Jasmine finally faces Khalid Al-Farsi directly. The 40th floor of Atlas Corporation transformed from an orderly business environment to barely controlled chaos in a matter of minutes. Journalists who had arrived expecting to document a routine business deal now scrambled to capture the unfolding drama, their cameras trained on the improbable standoff between a 13-year-old black girl and 2 billionaires. Richard Whitfield recovered his composure, first raising his hands for quiet. "Everyone, please. Let's handle this professionally." He turned to the security guards. "Release Miss Morgan, but secure that tablet as evidence." As the guards released their grip on Jasmine's arm, Whitfield addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we'll need to postpone our announcement while we investigate some discrepancies in the contract documentation." Khalid Al-Farsi stepped forward, his expression carefully controlled. "Richard, this is highly irregular. Perhaps we should discuss this privately rather than creating a spectacle." His eyes flicked dismissively toward Jasmine, especially based on the wild accusations of a child. Jasmine stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. "I speak Arabic," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the hushed room. "I can translate the hidden clauses right now so everyone can hear exactly what you were trying to hide." She turned to the former Al Jazeera correspondent who had offered her help. "Would you verify my translation, please?" The woman nodded, stepping forward. "I'm Layla Hakim, formerly with Al Jazeera, now with the Tribune. I'd be happy to verify any Arabic text in question." Samir Nazari's composed facade cracked slightly. "This is ridiculous. We are not subjecting a multi-million-dollar business transaction to impromptu translation by a janitor's daughter." The contempt in his voice was unmistakable. Several journalists exchanged glances, sensing the story growing more compelling by the minute. Whitfield, realizing the potential PR disaster unfolding before cameras, made a quick decision. "Let's move this discussion to the main conference room. Miss Hakim, if you would join us as an independent observer, the rest of the press, please wait here. We'll provide a full statement shortly." As they moved toward the conference room, Al-Farsi caught Whitfield's arm. "Richard, you're making a grave mistake. This contract represents months of negotiation and due diligence by the finest legal minds in corporate law." His voice lowered. "Do you really want to jeopardize a $500 million investment because of some child's interference?" Whitfield hesitated, clearly torn between his desperate need for Al-Farsi's capital and the disturbing evidence on the tablet. Carter stepped closer to his father. "Dad, look at the emails again. They specifically targeted Jasmine's mother after learning someone was raising concerns about the Arabic sections. That's not how innocent people act." Inside the conference room, an unlikely group assembled around the massive table. Whitfield and 3 Atlas executives, Khalid and Samir, from Al-Farsi Investments, Layla Hakim, as the independent translator, Carter and Jasmine herself, still clutching the tablet with its damning evidence. Atlas's head legal counsel, a stern woman named Patricia Winters, spread the contract on the table. "Now, Miss Morgan, what exactly are you alleging is in this contract?" Jasmine pointed to specific sections in the Arabic addendum. Section 4.7 contains trigger clauses that activate when quarterly earnings fall below 70% of projections for 2 consecutive quarters. When triggered, voting control transfers automatically to Al-Farsi Investments, effectively giving them controlling interest in Atlas, while only paying for 20% equity. Winters frowned. "That's not what our translated version says. It indicates standard performance review provisions, nothing about control transfer." "That's because you were given a deliberately misleading translation," Jasmine explained, turning to Miss Hakim. "Could you please translate this section?" The journalist studied the text carefully, then looked up with surprise. The girl is correct. This clause does indeed specify automatic transfer of voting rights if earnings targets are missed. It's written in highly technical legal Arabic that even a decent Arabic speaker might misinterpret without specialized knowledge. She continued reading. There are also clauses regarding patent transfers and intellectual property rights that aren't reflected in the standard terms. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Whitfield turned to Al-Farsi, his expression hardening. "Is this true? Were you planning to take control of my company through hidden contract terms?" Khalid maintained his composure. "Business is business, Richard. Due diligence is the responsibility of both parties. If your team failed to properly translate important documents, that hardly constitutes fraud on our part." Samir attempted to regain control of the situation. "This is simply a misunderstanding about standard protective clauses. All investments include performance metrics, not ones deliberately disguised in mistranslated documents," Carter interjected. "The emails on your tablet specifically discuss hiding these terms where Atlas lawyers wouldn't find them." Samir's face darkened with anger. "That tablet was stolen from my personal belongings. Any information obtained from it is inadmissible and possibly illegal." "Actually, Miss," Hakim interjected as a journalist, "I can report on information of public interest regardless of how it was obtained. And a $500 million corporate fraud attempt certainly qualifies as public interest." Khalid shot her a venomous look before turning back to Whitfield, his tone softening to one of reasonable negotiation. "Richard, perhaps we've had some communication issues in our negotiations. These things happen in international business. Why don't we take a step back, review the contract together, with proper translators, and come to a mutually beneficial agreement?" But the damage was done. Whitfield's pride had been wounded, his trust betrayed. "I think we're done here, Khalid. There will be no deal today or any day." He turned to his legal counsel. "Patricia, prepare a statement for the press. Make it clear that Atlas Corporation discovered irregularities in the contract and chose to terminate negotiations." Al-Farsi's mask of civility finally slipped. "You're making a catastrophic mistake, Whitfield. My investment was your only lifeline. Without it, Atlas will be bankrupt within 6 months." His gaze shifted to Jasmine, cold fury in his eyes. "And all because you chose to listen to a cleaning woman's daughter instead of honoring our agreement." The contempt in his voice hung in the air, highlighting the vast gulf of power and privilege that Jasmine had dared to bridge. Whitfield stiffened. "That cleaning woman's daughter just saved my company from corporate theft. Perhaps if I'd listened to her sooner, we wouldn't have wasted months on fraudulent negotiations." He gestured toward the door. "Security will escort you out, mister." Al-Farsi. As security guards approached, Khalid leaned closer to Whitfield. "This isn't over. My influence extends far beyond this deal. No other investors will touch Atlas after I'm done sharing my experience with your unprofessional conduct." Samir attempted to retrieve his tablet from Jasmine, but Carter stepped between them. "I think this stays with us as evidence." Jasmine watched the Al-Farsi delegation leave their dignified exit, belied by the fury, evident in their rigid postures and clipped movements. As they departed, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. The immediate crisis had been averted, but Atlas still faced bankruptcy without the investment they'd been counting on. And Jasmine had just made enemies of some very powerful men. Whitfield turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Young lady, you've certainly caused quite a disruption today." Jasmine met his gaze steadily. "I was trying to prevent a bigger one, sir." He nodded slowly. "So it seems." His tone softened slightly. "How exactly does a 13-year-old janitor's daughter learn to read legal Arabic?" "I taught myself," she replied simply. "I found discarded language learning software in the executive recycling bins." "I like languages." Patricia Winters looked skeptical. "Taught yourself legal Arabic? That's rather difficult to believe." Miss Hakim interrupted. Her translation was flawless. Whatever her methods, she clearly understands the language at an advanced level. Whitfield studied Jasmine thoughtfully. "Well, Miss Morgan, it appears we owe you a debt of gratitude for your intervention." His words were correct, but his tone remained distant, as if he couldn't quite reconcile being saved by someone he considered so beneath him. Carter was less restrained. "Dad, she literally just saved the company from being stolen out from under us." Maybe show a little more appreciation. Whitfield's jaw tightened at being corrected by his son in front of others. Yes, well, thank you, Miss Morgan. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a corporate crisis to manage. It was a dismissal, plain and simple. Despite everything, Jasmine was still just the janitor's daughter to him, a temporary anomaly in his world of power and privilege, not someone who belonged in his boardroom. As security prepared to escort her out, Jasmine remembered something crucial. "My mother," she said suddenly. "Al Farsi had her fired this morning. Will she get her job back?" Whitfield looked uncomfortable. "That's an HR matter. I'm sure they'll review the circumstances." His non-commitment was answer enough. Despite saving Atlas from disaster, Jasmine and her mother remained disposable in the corporate hierarchy. As she was led toward the elevator, Jasmine heard the executives already discussing damage control and alternative funding sources. Her moment of importance was over, invisibility reclaiming her as quickly as it had temporarily released her. Outside the building, reporters swarmed shouting questions about the collapsed deal and her role in exposing the fraud. Jasmine kept her head down, pushing through the crowd until she spotted her mother standing across the street, her expression a mixture of confusion and fear. When Denise saw her daughter emerge from the building surrounded by press, she rushed forward, pushing through the journalists to grab Jasmine's arm. "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice tight with panic. "It's all over the news that some kid exposed fraud in the Al Farsi deal." "Tell me that's not you they're talking about." Before Jasmine could answer, a reporter thrust a microphone between them. "Are you the janitor who was fired this morning? How does it feel to have your daughter save the company that terminated you?" Denise recoiled from the camera, her years of training in social invisibility, making this sudden exposure terrifying. "We have no comment," she said firmly, pulling Jasmine away from the crowd. "We're going home, now." As they hurried toward the bus stop, Jasmine tried to explain everything that had happened, but Denise wasn't listening. Her mother's face was set in a mask of grim resignation, the expression of someone who knew that standing up to power always came with consequences, especially for people like them. "You think you've won something today," Denise finally said as they boarded the bus. "But you have no idea what you've just done." 3 weeks after the collapsed Atlas Al Farsi deal, the Morgan apartment felt smaller than ever. Bills covered the kitchen table, many stamped with final notices and threats of service disconnection. Denise sat hunched over them, calculator in hand, trying to stretch her remaining savings and meager unemployment benefits to cover another month's expenses. Jasmine watched from the doorway, guilt weighing heavily on her shoulders. The aftermath of her actions had been swift and merciless. Despite saving Atlas from a predatory acquisition, neither she nor her mother had been treated as heroes. Quite the opposite. Within days of the confrontation, Denise had been blacklisted from janitorial services throughout Chicago's corporate sector. No specific reason given, the employment agencies would say, but the timing made the cause obvious. The Al Farsi incident had made national news for a few days. The David and Goliath story of a janitor's daughter exposing corporate fraud, briefly captivating the public's imagination before being replaced by the next news cycle. Jasmine had received a few interview requests which Denise had firmly declined. "We don't need that kind of attention," she had insisted. "It only makes things worse." She was right. Their neighbors treated them differently now, some with awe, others with resentment for stirring up trouble. Denise's friends from Atlas, still employed but frightened for their own jobs, had stopped calling. The isolation was almost as difficult as the financial strain. Atlas Corporation had survived the collapsed deal barely. Richard Whitfield had managed to secure emergency funding from a consortium of smaller investors, though on much less favorable terms than Al Farsi had offered. The company announced another round of restructuring, laying off 20% of its workforce. The cleaning staff was outsourced entirely to a third-party service. No one from Atlas had contacted the Morgans since the incident, not even to thank Jasmine for preventing the fraud. It was as if the company wanted to erase all evidence of how close they'd come to disaster and who had saved them. "We need to talk about moving," Denise said, suddenly breaking the silence. "I can't find work in Chicago, not after this." Jasmine felt her stomach drop. "Moving where my cousin in Detroit said she might be able to get me on at the hospital where she works. Cleaning job night shift." Denise wouldn't meet her daughter's eyes. "It's not ideal, but we don't have many options left. Moving would mean a new school leaving behind Jasmine's few friends, starting over in an unfamiliar city. But what choice did they have? Denise's health was deteriorating without her medications, which they could no longer afford. The sacrifice of their stability was the price of Jasmine's moment of courage. The doorbell rang, an unusual occurrence in their apartment. Denise frowned, setting down her calculator. "Are you expecting someone?" Jasmine shook her head, equally confused. When Denise opened the door, they found a courier holding an official-looking envelope. "Delivery for Jasmine Morgan," he announced, consulting his clipboard. "Needs a signature." After signing, Denise closed the door and stared at the envelope, which bore the embossed logo of Whitfield and Associates, Richard Whitfield's personal legal firm. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tight with suspicion. Jasmine took the envelope with trembling hands and opened it carefully. Inside was a formal letter requesting her presence at Atlas Corporation headquarters the following morning for a meeting with Richard Whitfield himself. No explanation was provided, just the date, time, and a note that a car would be sent to transport her. "Absolutely not," Denise declared after reading the letter. "They ignored us for weeks, and now they summon you like some servant." "I don't think so." Jasmine understood her mother's anger, but curiosity pulled at her. What if it's something important? Maybe compensation for what happened. Denise laughed bitterly. People like Whitfield don't give money to people like us unless forced by a court. More likely, it's some legal document to silence you about what happened. They argued late into the night, Denise insisting they ignore the summons, Jasmine advocating for at least hearing what Whitfield wanted. In the end, curiosity and desperation won out. What did they have to lose at this point? The following morning, a sleek black car arrived at their apartment building, causing neighbors to peek curiously through their windows. The driver, professionally courteous, held the door for them without a hint of condescension. It was Jasmine's first time in a luxury vehicle, though she tried not to show her awe at the leather seats and privacy partition. Denise sat rigidly beside her, dressed in her best outfit. Still shabby compared to the corporate attire they would soon face, but dignified in its neatness. They arrived at Atlas headquarters exactly on time, the driver escorting them through a private entrance to avoid the main lobby. The executive floor, once the site of Jasmine's greatest triumph and humiliation, now felt eerily familiar as they were led to Richard Whitfield's private office. The CEO greeted them personally at the door, his manner noticeably different from their previous encounters, less dismissive, almost respectful. "Mrs. Morgan, Miss Morgan, thank you for coming. Please have a seat." His office was larger than their entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of Chicago. They sat in plush chairs, facing his massive desk. Denise perched on the edge as if ready to flee at any moment. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked you here." After all this time, Whitfield began, his tone carefully neutral. "The truth is, I've been doing a lot of thinking since our last encounter." He leaned forward slightly. The Alfarsi incident was illuminating in many ways, not just about business but about my own blindness to certain realities. Denise remained silent, her expression guarded. Jasmine watched Whitfield carefully, trying to gauge his sincerity. "The fact is," he continued, "Atlas Corporation would have been destroyed if not for your daughter's intervention, Mrs. Morgan. We've spent weeks with independent auditors reviewing the contract. The fraud was even more extensive than initially apparent. We would have lost everything, the company, thousands of jobs, decades of innovation, all because I was too arrogant to listen to someone I considered beneath my notice." The admission seemed to cost him something, a crack in the armor of privilege he'd worn his entire life. "I've been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about how I've conducted business and how I've treated people I deemed unimportant to my world." Denise finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, Mr. Whitfield, recognition doesn't pay our bills. I've been blacklisted from corporate cleaning services throughout Chicago. We're facing eviction next month." Whitfield nodded, accepting the rebuke. "I'm aware. That's part of why I asked you here today." He pressed a button on his desk intercom. "Send them in, please." The office door opened, and to Jasmine's surprise, Carter Whitfield entered, followed by a woman she recognized as Patricia Winters Atlas's legal counsel and a third person she didn't know, a middle-aged black woman in an impeccable suit. Carter nodded at Jasmine with what appeared to be genuine respect, a far cry from their first encounter. Whitfield made the introductions. "This is Veronica Talbot, our new Chief of Diversity and Corporate Culture. And of course you know Miss Winters and my son." He turned to Jasmine. "Carter has been quite insistent that I make things right with you and your mother. Unusually so, for a teenager generally concerned only with his own interests." Carter actually looked embarrassed. "I just thought it was messed up how everything went down." Whitfield continued, his manner becoming more businesslike. "Mrs. Morgan, I would like to offer you a position at Atlas Corporation. Not in janitorial services, but in our newly formed Cultural Intelligence Division, working directly with Miss Talbot. Your experience and perspective would be invaluable as we reshape our corporate culture." Denise looked stunned. "I don't have a college degree. I've been a cleaner my whole life." "You have something more valuable. Lived experience and integrity," Veronica Talbot interjected. "And we would provide training and education as needed. The position comes with full benefits, including comprehensive health care." At the mention of health care, Denise's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Jasmine knew her mother was thinking of her chronic pain and the medications she couldn't afford. Whitfield turned to Jasmine next. "As for you, young lady, your academic potential is extraordinary, as is your gift for languages. We would like to offer you a full scholarship to Westridge Academy with a guaranteed internship at Atlas during summers and school breaks if you're interested." Westridge was one of Chicago's most prestigious private schools, normally accessible only to the wealthiest families. Jasmine could barely process what she was hearing. Patricia Winters spoke up, her legal mind addressing the practical details. "We've prepared agreements for both offers, with no non-disclosure requirements regarding the Al-Farsi incident. We're not asking for your silence, only your talent." She slid folders across the desk toward them. "Take time to review them. Consult your own attorney if you wish." Denise hadn't touched the folders. "Why now?" she asked bluntly. "It's been 3 weeks. We've been struggling, and you've known it. Why wait until we're nearly homeless to offer help?" It was Carter who answered, surprising everyone. "That was my fault." He looked directly at Jasmine. "After everything happened, I started researching what you'd told us about Al-Farsi's previous deals. You were right about those, too. They've destroyed at least 4 other companies the same way they tried to take Atlas." He shifted uncomfortably. "But I also looked into what happened to you and your mom. I found out about the blacklisting, the financial problems." He glanced at his father. "I've been working on Dad for 2 weeks to make this right." He needed convincing. Richard Whitfield had the grace to look ashamed. "My son has been quite persistent and quite correct." He stood moving to look out at the Chicago skyline. "The truth, Mrs. Morgan, is that it took me time to overcome my own prejudices. To admit that I had been not just wrong but profoundly unfair in my treatment of you and your daughter." He turned back to face them. "I was raised to believe that success was purely meritocratic, that I achieved everything through my own brilliance and hard work. The idea that I benefited from systemic advantages while equally talented people were held back by systemic barriers. It wasn't something I was willing to see." The admission hung in the air, unexpected from a man like Whitfield. Denise studied him, decades of hard-earned skepticism evident in her expression. "Pretty words, Mr. Whitfield." "But I've heard pretty words before." Whitfield nodded, acknowledging her doubt. "Actions matter more than words. The offers before you are just a start. Atlas is implementing company-wide changes in hiring, promotion, and compensation practices. Miss Talbot has full authority to overhaul our corporate culture with board-level support." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "And on a personal level, I've been doing some long-overdue education about my own biases. It's been uncomfortable, but necessary." Jasmine watched her mother carefully weigh their options, knowing that pride and justifiable distrust were battling against practical necessity. Finally, Denise reached for the folders. "We'll review these, and let you know our decision." As they prepared to leave, Carter stepped forward. "There's one more thing." He handed Jasmine a small package. "Open it later," he said simply. The car returned them to their apartment, the drive passing in contemplative silence. Once home, Denise spread the offer documents across their kitchen table, pushing aside the unpaid bills to make room. The terms were even better than Whitfield had indicated verbally. The compensation package for Denise was generous, the educational opportunities for Jasmine comprehensive. Only after thoroughly reviewing everything did Jasmine remember the package from Carter. Inside was a handwritten note and a check. The note read simply, "For the bills until Mom starts her new job. No strings attached. I'm sorry for how I treated you before. Carter." The check, drawn on what appeared to be Carter's personal account, would cover 3 months of their expenses. Denise stared at it in disbelief. "That boy gave you his own money." Jasmine nodded, equally surprised. "Looks like it." They sat in silence, absorbing the dramatic reversal of their fortunes. Then Denise began to laugh softly at first, then with increasing abandon, until tears streamed down her face. All these years, she finally managed cleaning up after rich white men being invisible, keeping my head down, and my 13-year-old daughter forces them to see us by speaking truth they couldn't ignore. She wiped her eyes, her laughter subsiding into something like wonder. Maybe the world is changing after all. As night fell over Chicago, the Morgan apartment felt different, still small, still in a neighborhood where sirens were common lullabies, but filled with something that had been in short supply: hope. Outside, the city continued its rhythms, unaware that in one small corner, an invisible girl had changed the course of lives and possibly a corporation. But the story wasn't quite over yet. 1 year later, Jasmine Morgan stood at the podium in Atlas Corporation's main auditorium, addressing an audience of business leaders, educators, and government officials. At 14, she'd grown taller, her posture more confident, though she still felt the flutter of nervousness as hundreds of eyes focused on her. Language is power. She began, her voice clear and steady. "When we control who can understand the conversation, we control who can participate in it. But when we break down those barriers, we create opportunities for voices that might otherwise remain unheard." The auditorium was packed for the launch of Atlas's International Business Ethics Initiative, a program Jasmine had helped develop during her internship. Behind her sat Richard Whitfield, significantly humbled from the man she'd first encountered. Veronica Talbot, whose diversity initiatives had transformed Atlas's culture. And most importantly, her mother Denise, now an assistant director in corporate communications. Her chronic pain finally properly treated, thanks to comprehensive health care. The past year had been one of extraordinary change. Denise had thrived in her new position, her innate intelligence and people skills finally finding appropriate expression. After years of being treated as invisible, she now led a team responsible for ensuring clear communication across all levels of the company. Her perspective, as someone who had worked in the lowest ranks, proved invaluable in identifying and addressing blind spots in corporate policies. Jasmine had initially struggled at Westridge Academy, facing skepticism and occasional hostility from classmates born into privilege. But her natural academic abilities, and the quiet confidence that came from having already faced down billionaires, soon earned her respect, if not universal acceptance. She maintained her language studies, adding Mandarin to her growing linguistic arsenal, while mentoring other scholarship students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Atlas Corporation itself had undergone a transformation. The collapse of the Al-Farsi deal had initially sent stock prices plummeting, but Whitfield's emergency funding and subsequent corporate restructuring had eventually stabilized the company. More significantly, the publicity surrounding the incident had forced a reckoning within Atlas's culture. Under Veronica Talbot's guidance, hiring practices were overhauled, pay disparities addressed, and advancement opportunities equalized. The invisible support staff, janitors, security guards, cafeteria workers, were brought in-house rather than outsourced, with better wages and benefits. Atlas became known as a leader in corporate ethics, turning what could have been a humiliating scandal into a redemption story. As Jasmine concluded her presentation, the audience rose in applause. She stepped away from the podium, accepting congratulations from various dignitaries before making her way to her mother. Denise embraced her tightly. "So proud of you, baby, so proud." Whitfield approached them, his manner respectful rather than condescending. "Excellent presentation, Jasmine. The educational outreach program you proposed has already received significant funding commitments." He turned to Denise. "And the board approved your recommendation for expanded healthcare benefits for all staff levels. Implementation begun next quarter." Denise nodded, professional but still maintaining a certain reserve with Whitfield. Their relationship had evolved into one of mutual respect, but the history between them ensured she never fully relaxed in his presence. As the event wound down, Jasmine noticed a familiar face at the back of the auditorium. Carter Whitfield, home from his first year at Yale. He'd changed too, his formerly arrogant demeanor, replaced by something more thoughtful. He made his way through the crowd to greet them. "Great speech," he said to Jasmine. "The Language Justice Initiative is going to make a real difference." He turned to Denise. "Mom wanted me to ask if you're still coming to dinner on Sunday. She's trying that new recipe you recommended." The most surprising development of the past year had been the unlikely friendship that formed between Denise Morgan and Elizabeth Whitfield, Richard's wife. What began as Elizabeth's awkward attempt at making amends had evolved into a genuine connection between women from vastly different backgrounds who discovered shared values beneath surface differences. These Sunday dinners, alternating between the Whitfield mansion and the Morgans' new apartment in a safer neighborhood, had become a symbol of the bridges being built, not just between two families, but between worlds that rarely intersected with genuine equality. After the event, Jasmine and Denise walked through the Atlas lobby toward the main entrance. No more service elevators or back doors for them. As they passed the security desk, the guard nodded respectfully. "Miss Morgan, Mrs. Morgan." It was a small thing, this acknowledgement, but it represented the fundamental change in how they were seen. They were no longer invisible. Outside, spring sunshine warmed the city streets. Denise checked her watch, a gift from her team on her 6-month work anniversary. "We should hurry if we're going to make your appointment at the UN interpreter program." Jasmine nodded, excitement bubbling up at the thought of the summer internship she'd secured at the United Nations. At 14, she'd be the youngest person ever accepted into the program. Her extraordinary language abilities, opening doors that once seemed impossible to reach. As they waited for their Uber, Denise squeezed her daughter's hand. "You know, all those years I told you to keep your head down, not to stand out. I was trying to protect you from disappointment." From the pain of reaching for something and being slapped back, she looked at the Atlas building gleaming in the sunlight. "But you taught me something important, Jasmine. Sometimes you have to stand up, even when everything and everyone tells you to stay invisible." Their car arrived, a normal, everyday occurrence now rather than the luxury it once represented. As they settled in the back seat, Jasmine thought about the journey they'd traveled in just 1 year. From the daughter of a janitor hidden in storage rooms, to teach herself languages, to a recognized prodigy with opportunities opening before her. From invisibility to influence. The car pulled into traffic, carrying them toward a future neither could have imagined before Jasmine made the fateful decision to speak up about a fraudulent contract. Behind them, Atlas Corporation stood, transformed as well, not perfect, still wrestling with the legacy of inequality, but moving in a direction that acknowledged the value of every person regardless of their position or background. All because one girl refused to remain invisible when it mattered most. What would you do if you discovered information that could change lives but might cost you everything? Would you have the courage to speak up like Jasmine did? Comment below with your thoughts on standing up against powerful interests, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Thank you for joining me for this journey of courage and transformation. Remember, sometimes the most powerful voice in the room belongs to the person everyone else has been trained not to see. Until next time, may you find the courage to be visible when it matters most. This story reveals powerful truths about visibility, courage, and systemic change. Jasmine's journey shows that those society renders invisible often observe and understand more than the powerful realize. Her ability to see what others missed wasn't despite her position as a janitor's daughter, but because of it. She developed unique skills precisely because she existed in the margins teaching herself languages while being underestimated by everyone around her. The story also demonstrates how systems of power perpetuate themselves. Atlas executives couldn't conceive that someone they considered insignificant could possess knowledge they lacked. Their blindness wasn't just personal prejudice, but institutional bias that filtered information based on its source rather than its merit. Jasmine's courage teaches us that sometimes a single voice can disrupt entrenched power structures, but also that such disruption comes with real risk. Her mother's fears weren't unfounded. Standing up to power has consequences, particularly for those already marginalized. Most importantly, this story shows transformation is possible, not through singular heroic acts alone, but through sustained commitment to change. Atlas became better, not just because Jasmine exposed fraud, but because that exposure created space for ongoing structural reform, turning visibility into genuine inclusion and opportunity. Real change requires both courage to speak truth to power and willingness from those in power to truly listen. What invisible barriers have you faced in your own life? Have you ever been in a situation where you knew something important but weren't being heard because of who you are? Or perhaps you've been on the other side, realizing too late that you missed valuable insight because you overlooked someone deemed unimportant. Share your experiences in the comments below. I'd especially love to hear stories of when someone spoke up despite the risks, or when an organization actually changed for the better after confronting uncomfortable truths. If Jasmine's journey resonated with you, please hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Subscribe for more powerful narratives that challenge us to see beyond our assumptions, and share this video with someone who might need courage to make their voice heard today. Thank you for joining me for this story of transformation. Remember, sometimes the most important voices are the ones society has trained us not to hear. Until next time, may you find the courage to be visible when it matters most, and the wisdom to listen when others find their voice.